Every complex system begins with something simple. Every industry. Strip away the noise. Decode reality first principles.
Imagine two. One spends 10 years building a revolutionary battery technology that could change transportation forever. The other takes a food delivery app from another country, adapts it for India, and becomes a billionaire in 6 years. Which founder gets funded? Which founder gets media attention? Which founder has a higher probability of success? And most importantly, why does this happen again and again in India? People often say Indian startups don't innovate. They just copy Western ideas. But that's like looking at an iceberg and only seeing the tip. Because when you dig deeper, something fascinating appears. Indian founders aren't copying because they're less creative. They're responding to incentives. And if you understand those incentives, you'll understand why India's startup ecosystem looks exactly the way it does. Let's start with a simple question. Imagine you build software that saves a business $100 per month. In the United States, charging $30 per month is easy. In India, that same customer might hesitate at a $300. Why? Purchasing power. Not population, not intelligence, not ambition. Purchasing power. India has more than 1.4 billion people. But startups don't earn revenue from people. They earn revenue from disposable income. And disposable income varies dramatically. Imagine two markets. Market A, 10 million customers, each willing to spend 100. Market B, 100 million customers, each willing to spend 5. Which market generates more revenue? The answer surprises many people. The smaller market. Because revenue isn't driven by population. It's driven by spending power. This creates a strange startup equation. Indian startups need massive scale just to reach revenues that Western startups achieve with far fewer customers. That's why so many Indian startups chase food delivery, payments, commerce, ride-hailing, quick commerce. Businesses where scale can compensate for lower spending power. Now let's talk about venture capital. Most people think VCs invest in startups. That's not actually their job. Their real job is generating returns. Let's see why that matters. Imagine you're a venture capitalist. You invest in 100 startups. Statistics suggest most will fail. A few survive. 1 or 2 must become gigantic. Otherwise, the fund loses money. This means VCs aren't searching for good businesses. They're searching for scalable businesses. And scalability loves predictability. Now imagine two pitches. Pitch A, we're building something entirely new. Nobody knows if customers want it. Pitch B, this model already succeeded in America. We are adapting it for India. Which feels safer? Pitch B. Not because it's guaranteed to work, but because somebody has already proven customers want it. The startup isn't solving two problems anymore. Only one. Instead of asking, does this business model work? They're asking, can we make it work in India? That's a much easier question. And investors love easier questions. Here's a concept that explains almost everything. Market validation. Let's say creating a startup requires answering 3 questions. Question 1, do customers want this? Question 2, can technology deliver it? Question 30, can we make money? For a brand new idea, all 3 are unknown. That's expensive. Very expensive. Now imagine Uber already exists. The world has already answered question 1. People clearly want ride sharing. Question 2 is solved. The only localization remains. Payments, pricing, regulations, operations. This dramatically reduces uncertainty. And uncertainty is the most expensive thing in business. Not salaries, not servers, not offices. Uncertainty. Because uncertainty destroys investment. Now we reach the most important concept. Risk asymmetry. Suppose you're a founder. You have 2 options. Option funding, create a groundbreaking AI chip. Potential outcome, massive success or complete failure after 10 years. Probability of success, maybe 1%. Option 20, build an Indian version of a proven SaaS product. Potential outcome, moderate success or moderate failure. Probability of success, much higher. Now here's the key. Founders don't experience risk symmetrically. If a startup fails after 10 years, career impact, financial impact, social impact can be enormous. Especially in countries where safety nets are weaker. The downside feels very real. The upside feels distant. Humans naturally optimize for survival before optimization. So founders often choose the path with lower uncertainty, not because they're less ambitious, because they're rational. The ecosystem rewards survival. This brings us to deep tech. Semiconductors, advanced materials, biotechnology, robotics, energy storage. The areas everyone says India should focus on. And they're right. But there's a problem. Deep tech is fundamentally different from software. Software startup launch in months, customer feedback immediately, revenue quickly iterate rapidly. Deep tech startup years of research, expensive infrastructure, regulatory approvals, manufacturing complexity, long commercialization cycles. One mistake can cost millions. One experiment can take months. One product cycle can take years. Now imagine you're a VC with a 10-year fund. Do you invest in a company that might generate revenue next quarter? Or one that might generate revenue 7 years from now? This is why deep tech ecosystems emerge slowly. Historically, Silicon Valley benefited from defense spending. Israel benefited from military R&D. Taiwan benefited from semiconductor strategy. China invested hundreds of billions in industrial capability. Deep tech requires more than entrepreneurs. It requires an ecosystem. Universities, capital, government support, research institutions, talent pipelines, manufacturing infrastructure. Everything must align. Here's where most people get the story wrong. Copying isn't the opposite of innovation. Often it's the beginning of innovation. Japan copied, then improved. South Korea copied, then improved. China copied, then improved. Today all three are innovation leaders. The pattern repeats throughout history. First import ideas and adapt ideas, then improve ideas. Finally invent new ideas. The real question isn't whether startups copy. The real question is, what happens after they copy? Do they stop there? Or do they build capabilities that eventually create original breakthroughs? Because innovation isn't an event, it's a progression. So why do Indian startups copy Western ideas? Not because founders lack creativity, not because investors lack vision, not because India lacks talent. The answer is much simpler. Purchasing power changes business economics. Venture capital rewards predictable outcomes. Market validation reduces uncertainty. Risk asymmetry influences founder decisions. And deep tech requires infrastructure that takes decades to build. Once you understand those forces, the startup ecosystem starts looking less like a failure of imagination and more like a predictable outcome of incentives. And that's the fascinating part. Because if incentives created today's startup ecosystem, then changing those incentives might create tomorrow's. The next generation of Indian startups may not be known for copying ideas. They may be known for creating them. But first, the economics have to make sense. People often blame founders for copying ideas. But ideas aren't the real constraint, incentives are. Change the incentives and innovation follows.
If you enjoyed this decode, subscribe to First Principles Decode. Join us as we uncover the first principles behind business, technology, economics, history, and the future. Thank you for watching.